The Institute for Economic Justice is set to launch at the University of the Witwatersrand in a few hours. Neil Coleman, who's the co-director of the Institute for Economic Justice, and Palesa Silabje, who's the chairperson of REFA at Wits University, join me in studio now for more. Thanks both so much for your time. Neil, I'll start with you. What is the Institute for Economic Justice, and how do you hope that it's going to make economics more relevant for Africa and what we need to do to develop?
Well, I think the three words, in a way, speak for themselves. Institute for Economic Justice. I think there would be a general understanding in our society that we don't have economic justice. We have massive wealth and massive poverty side by side. They're this same mantra that everyone talks about: unemployment, poverty, inequality. The question is, what are the policies, the evidence-based policies which are well-researched, which are going to change that situation? But the point is that change doesn't just come about through policies. It comes about through real people mobilizing around real issues. And that's what we want to do, is put real issues on the agenda. When I had my makeup done in the studio, the person asked me, she said, when I said it was the Institute for Economic Justice, she said, is it fair that a millionaire pays the same tax that I pay? And that's a very simple question, but it's a very good question, because unless you have a progressive taxation system, you can't redistribute the wealth that is so unequally distributed in society. So the research of the Institute will look at what are the tax options, how can we reconfigure our system. We're sitting now with austerity where we cannot get the resources that we need to develop our country. What are the forms of taxation that could be introduced to begin to stimulate our economy, redistribute the wealth? President is talking about a fiscal stimulus, but we're going into an austerity budget. Now, what is the relationship between the need for a stimulus to the economy and a budget which cuts spending? Okay. These are big questions which the Institute, through its research, will begin to address.
Palesa, when we speak about leadership, about economic policies, it appears that the older, mostly male voices dominating our conversations about economics and leadership in South Africa. What do you think needs to be done, and how are you going to get involved with both the Institute and REFA in our economy and the discussions around them?
Okay, so REFA at Wits is a student society that aims to bring about pluralism in our curriculums. So currently, as things stand, we only learn one form of school of thought in our curriculum, which is neoclassical economics. And this does not equip us with the necessary tools to solve South African problems, and it also renders economics useless in our society. So our aim is to conscientize students about these problems and the gaps that economics brings about, and hopefully encourage students to go into policy making from a more diverse economics curriculum. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it comes to economic policy, what changes do you think that government should make in its economic policy tools to achieve the kind of developmental agenda that they want to, considering that we've got these legacies of spatial planning, which is a problem of vast inequality as well?
I think the first step is to analyze using different tools. So currently economics is very mathematical, it's very qualitative, and it doesn't really encompass quantitative methods of solving problems. Also encompassing other schools of thought. So if you encompass Marxism, if you encompass post-Keynesian economics as opposed to neoclassical economics only, this will give you a way of analyzing issues more critically and as opposed to thinking from a silo. Yeah.
Also, I think, you know, this festival is called Rethinking Economics for Africa, and a lot of the economics that's taught at our universities is inherited from other contexts, from European contexts, from inappropriate prescriptions from, for example, the multilateral institutions, the IMF and World Bank, etc. So the point is, as Palesa is saying, to begin to develop tools, analytical tools and research which is appropriate to our context.
We know that appearing at REFA is Professor Mkandawire. He was on the SABC yesterday and saying that part of South Africa's problem is that our financial sector is too big. Let's go through that, and is that one of the things that you'll be discussing this evening and with the program?
Absolutely. I'm sure Prof Mkandawire will raise it in his keynote address tonight, but we've also got a session on financialization of the economy, because if you look at the size of the financial sector in South Africa relative to the size of our GDP, it's completely disproportionate. And as Prof. Nkandaweri said on SAFM this morning, this then distorts economic policy making, because the economic policy makers are constantly trying to reassure the financial markets instead of addressing the demands of the real economy, and instead of addressing the need for industrialization, for the development of our manufacturing sector, for a services sector that really services the economy rather than simply the financial sector and speculation.
When we're speaking about economics and we're hearing these very big terms like we are in this discussion now, it could be intimidating for someone who's watching, who says that they want to get involved and they want to be more informed about how the economy of this country works. Where do they start besides, I hope you're not going to say, attending the conference?
It's a good start.
So part of the work that we do as Rethinking Economics for Africa is, yes, we work on curriculum reform, but another ideology of us is to democratize economics, to teach economics to people on the ground, people who aren't necessarily studying economics. So if people, especially students, can get involved in our movement countrywide, we can go out into communities and actually teach people about economic policy and how to analyze things. What does GDP mean? Ordinary people don't know these things. So, yeah.
And who will you be working with your institute, and how will you be getting people involved? We've just heard from Palesa how she's doing that.
So the institute doesn't see itself as an ivory tower research institution. Although we link to Wits University, we see ourselves as very much doing research policy advocacy. That's our mantra, research policy advocacy, which means basically that our research must feed into policy, and it must also articulate with civil society organizations, with the trade union movement, engage with the policy alternatives that they can articulate in relation to government. So some of the work we've done already, for example, around the Budget Justice Coalition, the Job Summit with the trade unions, and now this Rethinking Economics movement is very much engaged with the social movements on the ground.
Thanks both so much for your time. Neil Coleman and Palesa Silabje speaking to us about rethinking economics in Africa and that Institute for Economic Justice.